Welcome back to Hidden Universe. This is the June 2026 Night Sky Guide. What's actually visible from a typical suburban backyard this month, the stories behind each object, and the gear you need to see them. June 2026 has 3 calendar events that will not happen again this year. A planetary alignment in the west bright enough to see from the middle of a city, the longest day of the year, and one of the lowest full moons in decades. But beyond the calendar events, June is one of the best months of the year to be outside after dark. Warm nights, the Milky Way starting to climb back into view, the summer constellations rising, and a handful of deep sky objects perfectly placed overhead, including the most famous globular cluster in the northern sky. Let's start with the headline event. On the evenings of June 8th and 9th, look low to the west, about an hour after sunset. You'll see 2 brilliant points of light hanging close together. Those are Venus and Jupiter, the 2 brightest planets in our sky. At their closest, they will be only about 1.5 degrees apart, closer than the width of 3 full moons placed side by side. Both are bright enough to punch through suburban light pollution. You don't need a telescope, you just need a clear western horizon. A conjunction like this is a trick of perspective. Venus is relatively nearby, Jupiter is far beyond it, heading toward the far side of the sun. They are nowhere near each other in space. They only appear to touch because they happen to line up along our view. Then, on the night of June 29th into the 30th, the full moon rises. It's known as the strawberry moon. The name comes from several northeastern Native American peoples, Algonquian, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Lakota, who used it to mark the harvest of wild strawberries each year. It is not a description of the moon's color, it's a calendar marker, the moon that meant the strawberries were ready. This full moon also rides one of the lowest paths across the sky of any in the year. Here's why. A full moon always sits opposite the sun. So when the sun is highest, near the summer solstice, the full moon must be at its lowest. From across the northern hemisphere, it barely clears the southern horizon, fat, orange, and slow-moving across the night. There's an even deeper cycle hiding here. The moon's orbital tilt drifts in a long, slow swing called a lunar standstill. The most extreme version happens once every 18.6 years. We just passed one in 2025, which is why last summer's full moon was the lowest in nearly 2 decades. June 2026 won't be quite that dramatic, but it's still part of the same low arc window. 2 days before that, on June 21st at 3:24 in the morning Central Time, comes the summer solstice, the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. This is the moment Earth's northern axis tilts most directly toward the sun. For roughly 5,000 years, humans have been marking this day. Stonehenge aligns to the solstice sunrise. Cultures from Egypt to the Americas built monuments to frame the turning of the sun. It is the oldest holiday humans have ever celebrated, older than every written religion. Now, what to look at on any clear June night? Starting with the easiest targets, the ones you can see with no equipment at all. By mid to late evening, look toward the eastern horizon. 3 of the brightest stars in the entire summer sky are rising together, Vega, Deneb, and Altair. Together they form a giant triangle that dominates the northern hemisphere's summer sky. It's called the Summer Triangle, and there's an old story hidden inside it. In Japanese and Chinese tradition, 2 of these stars, Vega and Altair, are lovers, separated by the bright river of the Milky Way, allowed to meet only one night each year. The summer festival of Tanabata still celebrates their reunion. The brightest of the 3 is Vega, a bluish-white star about 25 light-years away. Science fiction fans may know it from the movie Contact, where the alien message arrives from Vega, a fitting choice, as you'll see in a few minutes. But the interesting thing about the real Vega is not how bright it is. It's that this star used to be the North Star, and it will be again. Earth's axis wobbles in a slow circle. The wobble takes nearly 26,000 years to complete. Right now, the axis points at Polaris, but it's only temporary. Roughly 14,000 years ago, when humans were first painting on cave walls, the axis pointed at Vega instead. And in the year 13,727, it will point at Vega once again. Every star you call permanent in the night sky is on a long, slow countdown. Polaris is just the pole star for now. Vega is patient. Vega will get its turn back. If you want to see something a little harder, grab a pair of binoculars and look low in the western sky during the first 2 weeks of June. You're looking for the Beehive Cluster, a loose swarm of about 1,000 stars, around 600 light-years away. Ancient cultures saw the beehive long before telescopes. The Greeks called it a manger. The Romans saw a cloud. Galileo was the first person to point a telescope at it, in 1610, and resolve it into individual stars. After mid-June, it sinks too close to the sun to see. So don't wait. Binoculars are wildly underrated for stargazing. A decent 10 by 50 pair costs less than a tank of gas, fits in a backpack, and will show you the moon's craters, the Beehive Cluster, the moons of Jupiter, and the Milky Way structure on a dark night. There's a link to a specific pair I recommend in the description. It's the first thing I'd give anyone getting into this hobby. Once you have a real telescope, even a small one, the sky opens up. Here are the 4 objects to spend June chasing. The first one is the moon itself. The best time to look is not when it's full. Full moon washes out detail. The best time is the first quarter, around June 21st, when the line between lit and dark, the terminator, cuts straight down the middle. That shadow line is where the craters come alive. Look for Tycho, a young crater near the south, with bright rays splashing across the surface. Science fiction fans know this one. Tycho is where the alien monolith is unearthed in 2001, A Space Odyssey. Then look for Copernicus, a huge bowl with terraced walls. And look for Plato, a dark, flat-bottomed crater near the moon's northern edge, the floor of an ancient lava lake. Next, point your telescope at Jupiter, but only in the first 10 days of June, while it's still in the western sky after sunset. After that, it gets too close to the sun for the rest of the month. Even at low magnification, you'll see 2 cloud bands across Jupiter's disk and 4 tiny dots beside it. Those are the Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. One of them, Europa, hides a global ocean beneath its ice, which is why science fiction keeps coming back to it. All these worlds are yours, warns the novel 2010, except Europa. In January of 1610, Galileo Galilei pointed a primitive telescope at this exact view and noticed those dots changed position from night to night. He realized they were moons orbiting another world. That single observation broke the idea that everything in the universe must orbit Earth. Think about what that meant. Before Galileo, every authority on Earth told you the universe revolved around us. Then a man with a hand-built tube of lenses pointed it at the sky for a few nights, and proved them all wrong. When you look at those 4 little dots through your own telescope, you are looking at the exact view that ended the geocentric universe. Now point your telescope at Albireo, a star in the constellation Cygnus, the swan marking the beak of the bird. Through the eyepiece, Albireo splits into 2 stars that should not be sitting next to each other. One is golden orange, the other is electric blue. The color contrast is striking. It looks photoshopped, but it's real. Astronomers used to think these 2 stars were gravitationally bound, a true binary system orbiting each other. But measurements from the Gaia Space Telescope suggest the 2 stars are most likely not bound. They just happen to line up along our line of sight, beautiful neighbors who do not actually know each other. And then there's the centerpiece of the June sky, Messier 13, the great globular cluster in Hercules. A tight, glittering ball of about 300,000 stars, packed into a sphere only 145 light-years across, sitting roughly 25,000 light-years from Earth. Through binoculars, M13 looks like a fuzzy star. Through a 6-inch telescope, the outer edges start to break into individual stars. Through a 12-inch, it looks like a snowball someone threw across the eyepiece. The stars in M13 are among the oldest objects in our galaxy. Astronomers estimate the cluster is somewhere between 11 and 13 billion years old, born within the first billion years of the universe's existence. Every star you see in that fuzzy ball was already old when our sun first ignited. But M13 is not famous for how it looks. M13 is famous because of what we did on November 16, 1974. On that day, at a ceremony to remodel the Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico, a team that included Carl Sagan, the same Sagan who later imagined a signal coming the other way, in contact, pointed the dish at M13 and sent a message. The Arecibo Message was 1,679 bits long. Arranged into a grid of 73 rows by 23 columns, it encoded the numbers 1 through 10, the atomic elements of DNA, the structure of the DNA double helix, a stick figure of a human being with our average height and the world's population, a map of our solar system, and a picture of the Arecibo dish itself. It was the first deliberate message humanity ever broadcast toward another stellar system. Traveling at the speed of light, that message will arrive at M13 in about 25,000 years. By the time it arrives, the cluster will have drifted. By the time it arrives, humans may not exist. Everything in that section, the moon's craters, Jupiter's moons, Albireo's colors, the outer stars of M13, is reachable with a 6 to 8-inch beginner telescope, often called a Dobsonian. There's a link in the description to the model I recommend for first-time buyers. It's the most telescope you can get for under $500, and the one I tell my friends to buy. If you want to push a little further, to see things small scopes struggle with, June has 2 more targets. First, Messier 57, the Ring Nebula. a small, perfect smoke ring in the constellation Lyra, sitting about 2,500 light-years from Earth. Through an 8-inch scope, it looks like a tiny gray donut floating in the eyepiece. Unmistakable, once you find it. But the Ring Nebula is not a static object. It is a star dying in real time. About 20,000 years ago, a sun-like star in Lyra ran out of nuclear fuel. It swelled, became unstable, and blew its outer layers off into space. What you're seeing through the eyepiece is the gas shell, still expanding outward at 15 miles per second. And here's the part to sit with. In about 5 billion years, our own sun will do this. It will swell into a red giant, swallow Mercury and Venus, and then shed its outer atmosphere into a ring just like this one. The Ring Nebula is a postcard from our solar system's future. The other June object worth setting an alarm for is Saturn. But Saturn is a morning object right now, rising in the east before dawn, about an hour before sunrise. Throughout June, it climbs a little higher each morning. Saturn is interesting in 2026 specifically because of its rings. In March of 2025, the rings were edge-on to Earth, basically invisible, a flat line. Throughout 2026, they are tilting back open. In June, they're only about 3 to 5 degrees open, narrow, but they're back. By the time Saturn reaches opposition in October, the view will be even better. The Ring Nebula and Saturn's rings are both within reach of a mid-tier telescope, something in the 8 to 12-inch range, like a larger Dobsonian. That's the next tier up, and there's a link in the description for the one I'd recommend for someone ready to graduate from a starter scope. But there is one category of object that even a mid-tier scope from a suburban backyard struggles to show you at all: distant galaxies. Galaxies are faint. Faint enough that the glow from streetlights, porch lights, and the next subdivision over washes them out completely. From a typical light-polluted suburb, most galaxies through a regular telescope look like nothing. A faint smudge, if anything. Smart telescopes solve this problem with computational tricks. They take dozens of short exposures, automatically align them, and stack them together. Each individual frame is washed out. But stacked, the faint signal of the galaxy emerges from the noise. From the same suburban driveway where your eyes see nothing, the camera sees spiral arms. The June object to point a smart telescope at is M51, the Whirlpool galaxy. 2 galaxies caught in mid-collision, about 31 million light-years from Earth. Through your eyes, even on the best night, in even the biggest backyard telescope, it looks like a smudge. Through a smart telescope, after 10 minutes of stacking from a typical suburb, the spiral arms appear. The smaller companion galaxy at the end of one arm becomes visible. You're watching 2 galaxies in the act of merging, and you're doing it from your driveway. I use a unistellar Odyssey for almost all of my deep sky observing. It's the most expensive piece of gear on my list, but it's the one that lets me actually do this hobby from a light-polluted suburb, and with a genuinely busy schedule. I can set it up and be looking at a galaxy in under 30 minutes. There's a link in the description for the exact model I use. If your goal is to see things you genuinely could not see any other way without a dark sky road trip, this is what unlocks that. So that's June 2026. 3 calendar events: the Venus and Jupiter conjunction on the 8th and 9th, the summer solstice on the 21st, and the strawberry moon on the 29th. The summer triangle rising every evening. The Beehive Cluster while you still have time, Jupiter early in the month. The moon, Albireo, and M13 all month long. The Ring Nebula and Saturn for the persistent, and M51 for those willing to invest in stacking. Every piece of gear I mentioned is linked in the description, organized from $20 binoculars all the way up to the smart telescope I personally use. Buying anything through those links supports the channel at no extra cost to you. It's how this project keeps going. I publish one of these guides every single month. If that's interesting to you, subscribe so the July guide shows up in your feed. Get outside, look up, and try at least one of these. I'll see you next month. One last thought. Everything in this video, the planets, the moon, the cluster, the dying star, the colliding galaxies, was already happening when you walked out to your car this morning. It's been happening all day. It's all still there during sunlight. The universe doesn't turn off. We just stop being able to see it. June is one of the best months to remember that